Hey folks, AWR Hawkins, Breitbart News. I want to talk to you real quick about President Joe Biden's push to open up gun manufacturers to lawsuits. I also want to talk about what that means for you, for me, for gun manufacturers. Because folks, it's a big deal. Now, on the campaign trail, Biden was very vocal about his opposition to the Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act. That act was signed into law in 2005 by President George W. Bush. The purpose of the law was to protect gun manufacturers from frivolous lawsuits. In other words, in situations where a gun is legally made and legally sold, the purpose of the act was to protect gun manufacturers from any misuse or criminal use that might follow the legal sale. In other words, whoever bought the gun legally might misuse it. Or whoever bought the gun legally, from them, the gun might be stolen and criminally used. Well, the Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act protected gun manufacturers from lawsuits over those type of third-party or criminal usages. All right, that's it. Those are the protections. The Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act does not protect gun makers in a situation where they produce a defective product or they're involved in a criminal enterprise or criminal misconduct or numerous other things. Doesn't protect them in that. Nevertheless, when President Biden talks about the Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act, he does so in a way that leads you to believe it grants total immunity to gun manufacturers.
We should also eliminate gun manufacturers from the immunity they receive from the Congress.
And folks, as I've already said, the Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act does not grant legal immunity. It grants protections against frivolous lawsuits. Now, you can read the act for yourself to understand it. Those who wrote the act made clear that the purpose behind it, or the reason behind it, was because suits had been filed against distributors and dealers and manufacturers, and that in many cases, those suits had been brought by third parties, including criminals. So you had a situation where criminals, after doing criminal conduct, could then turn around and sue gun makers. And those who framed the Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act understood if this kind of suit is allowed, if these kinds of suits are allowed, we won't have gun manufacturers long. They made that clear. They made that clear again in those early paragraphs in the bill. They said that these types of suits would lead to the quote-unquote disassembly of an entire industry. Again, the disassembly of an industry. That was the purpose. The Protection of the Lawful Commerce in Arms Act was to be sure that the gun manufacturing that thrives in America in one generation will be able to survive, to thrive in America in the next generation. It won't be so. It will not be so if frivolous lawsuits are allowed. And you need to understand, Biden is determined to remove these protections. We covered at Breitbart, February 24th, 2020. He was campaigning in South Carolina. He brought up the Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act, criticizing it. He then referenced gun makers and he said, "I'm going to take you down."
Well, I got news for you, gun manufacturers. I'm coming for you, and I'm going to take you down.
This is on the campaign trail. He referenced gun makers and said, "I'm going to take you down." Folks, there's a war on the Second Amendment.